tardes a todos y bienvenidos. Good afternoon and welcome everyone to this first talk inside the Madrid Design Pro series, an invitation organized by the Madrid Design Festival to bring us closer to big names in the design industry and to know more about them, their work, their offices, even visiting them, and how they get inspired. My name is Rocío Arjona. I'm representing today Cosentino, specifically Cosentino City Madrid, the showroom that you can visit if you are also a passionate of design like us. If you have never visited, I invite you to come and visit us during this month of February or any other time. Today is my pleasure to be next to Paula Scher, one of the most admired and influential professionals in the world of design industry. And to introduce her, obviously, when we say her name, we all think about Pentagram, CBS Records, but there are so much to say about her in her over 40 years of experience in the design industry, in graphic design, illustration, even art. We can see her works everywhere around, wherever we are in the world. We will see, we go to the bank, in the street, we can see part of her works like those linked to Microsoft, to the Metropolitan Opera, the Public Theater, the Museum of Modern Art, many others. For sure, many of the people connected today, they know about Paula Scher much more. But obviously, let's go directly to know more directly from her. Good morning, Paula. Thank you so much for being today with us. You are the first guest that is opening the Madrid Design Pro Talks. And for us, it's a pleasure to have been connected to you from New York City to Madrid.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
During this talk, we pretend to know more about you, obviously. We will be showing some of your works during the talk. And obviously, we have also a chat in YouTube. And I invite anyone following us today to share their comments, any questions to Paula. We will be happy to launch them directly. So just to start with the interview, Paula, you have over 40 years of experience in the design industry, hundreds of honors in the industry. How was the beginning of Paula Scher in the design industry, the design work?
Well, I was very lucky because I moved to New York City at a time where graphic design wasn't really understood as a profession. And of course, there were no computers and everything was done by hand. And I was a young kid with a lot of energy, and I got into the music industry, and I did it because a boss recommended me from another job I had, and I began working at first Atlantic and then CBS Records. And the image on the screen is the art department that I worked in at CBS, where I worked with a whole pile of talented designers. And I knew very young that this was the way to work, that you learn from other talented people and you compete with each other and you inspire each other, and that's how you grow. And from that early point, I was very interested in typography, but I was also a generalist. I was a pure art director and bought illustration and photography and made about 150 album covers a year because I was the East Coast art director of CBS by the time I was 26. And I left in my 30s and started my own company then.
You share with us your experience, but do you think that your beginning was different to the beginning for youngers now in the design industry?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said. My beginning was what?
If you think that it's very different, the beginning that you had in the past to the beginning that youngers are having now in the design industry.
Absolutely. It was like going into the Wild West. There was no expectation. You were not competing with other designers sometimes. You were competing with printers. who would throw in the design as well as the printing of whatever the project was, so that you didn't. There were a lot of people who didn't understand what a designer did. Nobody understood what a typeface was. They thought that was just the lettering. They didn't see the difference between fonts. They didn't understand how things were made. And very often, clients were very problematic. But the music industry was unusual because record covers helped sell records, so that there was an immense expectation that these things would be interesting and good and, you know, support the recording artists. And so I had a lot of control and a lot of freedom in what I did, which was highly unusual at the time. And by the end of my really 10 years in the record industry, I had developed a complete body of work and a total style. And it helped me later in life.
Okay, it is famous for you to say that typography is like painting with words, and for you it has been the way to communicate yourself with the world. You always put the letter as the center of your art. So for you, how do you get to put the letter as the origin of everything?
You know, it evolved. I was much more of a generalist when I was young. I was really an art director. You know, somebody who sometimes bought illustration or bought photography or came up with an idea that had to be built. And I began to lose interest in it. I found when I bought illustration and the cover was successful and got, you know, attention, that the illustrator got more credit than I did, even though if it was my idea, or the same with the photography. And I felt like really more like somebody's representative as an art director, and I wanted to do my own work. And the only thing I really did well was design the typography, because that's what I did on top of other people's illustrations and photographs. And I began to expand what typography could do. Right now, you're looking at an image that was done much later, probably 20, 25 years later than the work you were showing before, where typography is completely applied to a building. And I began doing environmental graphics, where these things might be electronic, or they might become things that are sculptural. And this became part of my communication system.
Okay, thank you, Paula. Before, when I was introducing you, obviously we had to mention Pentagram. We all know that you were the first female partner to become part of it in 1991. You since then have been connected to Pentagram. We would like to know if you have felt in any way that this is influencing your work, that being part of Pentagram influenced your works.
Well, when I had my own business for about 7 years before I joined Pentagram in 1991. And I had found at that time that the kind of work I could get as a woman alone in business was limited, and that I never could get bigger paying jobs or jobs where I would really grow and expand what I could do. So when the opportunity came to join Pentagram, you have to be invited in, and Woody Pirtle, who was a partner in New York, came and took me out to lunch and asked me if I wanted to join. And I was at first nervous about that. I thought they were very corporate, and I was not. You know, I mean, I came out of the music industry. And I was nervous about joining, but I realized if I could do it, I could expand the kind of work I got, because that group would give me credibility. And people would come to me knowing I was endorsed by this bigger group. And in fact, my thinking was right, because almost, I would say, after I was there for about a year and a half, my business began to change drastically. And I was capable of getting identity work that I did not get in any huge amount before, and that the identities were visible in New York City and then globally visible. And that was a very big change.
If in a way we can say that we are all users of your works. We go to a bank, we buy jewelry, we go to the office, and we are seeing your typographies, your logos, your works in a way. You have so many works to share with us, but I'm sure there could be a selection from your side, the ones that represent you the most. Could you share them with us?
Well, there's work that I do with big clients, and some of that work is a rewarding, but that's not necessarily very personal work. And the work that I feel the best about is the work where I feel like I've really made some kind of advancement or breakthrough. And the projects that are like that are really things like everybody knows, like the public theater, where the typography is really the whole project, and that you can recognize the theater because of that typography. And that work has become very synonymous with New York City. As a matter of fact, this really kind of got me mad, is that, you know, the governor of New York made this program called Pop-Up New York, which was going to be theaters and festivals in New York City, and somebody really imitated the public theater identity. And I know that in doing it, it was because Governor Cuomo said, well, it has to feel like New York. So that was, I feel like, why don't they just hire me? Why imitate the identity? The public was mad. They're not even involved in the program. But these things happen. And this is, you know, at this point in time, this is a 27-year relationship. I began working with them in 1994 and developed their identity, and then the street posters that everybody knows. And I continue to do it to this day. And the work is very important to me because it's where I get to exercise and try new things.
Mm-hmm. And we were mentioning some of the companies that you've been working with. We would like to know, how do you convince your clients with a typography that is going to represent them for years?
Well, I think it's a process, and that every designer does it a bit differently. And really, when you're dealing with your clients, the important thing is that they listen to you and that they trust you. And what I try to do is I try to teach my clients how to see, because often they see something they like, but it may not be appropriate for them, or it may be very dated, or they don't know why they like it. Where what I will do is try to find some logic and reason for why approaching something a specific way is going to matter to them. And it's not just branding talk about who they are and who their audience is. It's also aesthetics, and explaining to them why certain colors or the way you make certain marks create certain kinds of impressions. And that through that process, we generally can make something that they respond to.
Mm-hmm. And then we would like, now that obviously you have such an experience, when a company is contacting you for a work, how is the process for Paula to, from the beginning, from the design point of inspiration to the final result that you offer them to your client? How is the process?
You know, I'm sorry, but you broke up and I missed about half of what you said. When a client comes to me, how do you? And then the rest of it got sort of garbled.
Yes, sorry. Just to know, how is the process for Paula from the beginning of our work, when you get the information from a client that they want to work with you? How do you get inspired? And how is the final result? How is that process? How do you manage that with your team, with your colleagues?
Well, it's definitely a process, and that the client usually comes in for an initial meeting, and I ask them a lot of questions. They ask me a lot of questions. I show them work. We have a discussion. If the meeting goes well, they ask me to write a proposal, and I propose the work, and we negotiate price. And after those things are in place, the relationship begins. And that what I need to know is how many people have approval. You're looking actually at the alphabet from the new school on the screen. There's an identity I did about 4 years ago, where we made this bespoke font, and the client had 40 people, it was a school, 40 people had to approve this identity. So that in the process of doing it, I had to persuade the president of the school, the deans of the individual schools, and then trustees and massive people. So I was presenting this over and over for about a year. And what I was doing with it is the way I actually explain things to clients. I'm a very good teacher. I've been teaching for 37 years. I teach my clients. Some people sell, I teach. And if I can get them to understand what I'm talking about, and I can make a connection with them, I can make something for them that they're going to appreciate and understand.
Yeah. Madrid Design Pro, normally this year we wanted to focus on visiting the studios of our guests. Obviously, due to the restrictions, we are unable to visit your office, but we would love to know more about how is a normal day for Paula when you go to the office and you work from there, which is not the situation right now.
I mean, I remember it. But, my life right now is going up to my studio in the country house that I'm in and getting on Zoom calls with everybody, just like I am right now. And ordinarily in my other life, in my real life before COVID, I used to go into the office. I have a team of people who work for me. I stop down in the morning to see them, to see what they're working on. And then I go upstairs and there may be a client meeting, and I have a client meeting, and the relevant people from my team come to the client meeting. And then we have another presentation that we're making, that we're showing somebody. And then I've got to do a speech somewhere, and then I come back, and then there's another client meeting, and then I look at some more work, and then we decide we're going to do some work on a new project, and we do a lot of sketching and go into the team room and paint things up on the wall. And then I got another business call I've got to take, and I've got to do a WebEx call with somebody in California, and blah, 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 and the day's over. And it's like that pretty much every day, of running from activity to activity. And that's very good for me. And it keeps me very active, and I'm thinking very quickly. I'm thinking on my feet. I'm responding to things quickly. I'm intuitive that way. I can solve lots of problems. I miss it desperately because now I get on a Zoom call and I meet with my team individually, and we can't make real eye contact. So I don't know if they get what I'm saying, and they don't know if I get what they're saying. And we sort of sometimes miss each other a bit. So it takes longer to do most things. I don't get interrupted by anything because my day is perfectly scheduled, and the Zoom calls last as long as they take, and then the day's over and the next day is exactly the same. So I found it much less inspiring and difficult to have immediate ideas because I'm not in motion. I'm sort of operating a piece of equipment all day, which I totally hate. And have to be completely honest about it. And if people want me to say uplifting things about what I've learned in this process, what I've learned is I don't want to be stuck in my room doing graphic design. I want to be back working with people in person. I don't like working online. So that's what I've learned. That was my big takeaway from a year of this.
And for you as a female, and also being such an influential professional, how does it feel to manage a graphic design studio?
It's wonderful because I have all these partners, so I don't really manage much of anything. I'm on the legal and finance committee, and sometimes I get involved in, relationship issues with the partners. But we have very powerful structure at Pentagram. We have a wonderful person who runs our public relations named Kurt Cofill, who manages the website and posts all the case studies and puts up the Instagram page and runs the Twitter account, and he does it for all 10 partners in the New York office. And we have a cook who makes lunch. Now, that's another thing I missed in COVID. All of a sudden, I had to make lunch for my husband and myself. I really resented it. I love going to Pentagram and having Ann make me lunch. That's great. We have wonderful conference rooms that are set up with all the equipment we need to make presentations and to run in and have ad hoc and private meetings. Each partner has a team room so that the teams can go in and work together privately and brainstorm ideas and also be able to have private discussions if we need to. And so I would say it's a place for a designer to work. It's really set up for designers. It's set up for the partners. The partners all sit together in one area of the business, and our desks are very close. We don't have private offices. We do everything out in the open. The goal of Pentagram is to share information and to learn from each other, and that's what makes it so terrific.
Paula, I'm gonna make a stop on the interview because we have some questions from the public that I'm gonna share with you.
Okay.
So we have Adriana Gier, and she's asking, large corporations or companies also haggle on price. How do you manage when it happens?
I didn't hear. Can you? There's an echo. You have to talk a little softer because it comes through. Let me see if I can turn the sound down. I don't want to turn my sound down, but you're coming through, so I can't hear the end of the question. Can you?
Yeah, she's asking if, about the price. If with a big company there is a haggle, like you fight with them with the price.
I heard big company and I think price, but I didn't hear the
Okay, repeat again. She's asking if large corporations or companies also haggle with you on price, if you have to negotiate a lot with that.
Always.
All the time.
All the time. I was doing it just before I took this call.
So it doesn't matter if you have your name or not, you have that.
No. I don't think I'm treated any better than I was 40 years ago, so don't have illusions that it's wonderful.
Okay. There is a question, but it's also on the list afterwards. We continue with the questions prepared. We know that a part of design, graphic design, we can see it right now, you are much into the most and more artistic side of you. We all know your paintings, the maps, the work that you are doing. And we would love to know if you are working right now in any of them.
Well, I was painting hurricanes for the past year and a half. I was sort of doing a global warming series. And then I got commissioned to paint a Porsche, which arrived in November. And I'm painting the United States on it. And I've been, doing it on weekends and sometimes in between. If I have an hour in the middle of the day, I may paint it. I finished the front end. I've got the back end to do and the whole side. So I think it's going to take me. It took me about 2 months to do this much work, so I figure it's going to be about 3 more months to finish the car.
Okay. Well, now we are receiving a lot of questions. I share with you some more. Alexandra Scherner, she's asking, I would love to know what you like the most of your job. After all these years, and which step of the whole design process you enjoy the most?
I really like phase one. With the beginning of phase two. Phase one is when I figure it out. And it's usually I'm showing 3 to 5 things. I always invariably think my first idea is best. When my first idea isn't best, then I'm having problems with the job. But usually I solve something very quickly and then I'm working very hard to make 2 or 3 other options. I like the part where I explain it to the client, and very often, I would say more than 50%, they pick the best option. Sometimes there's people that have differing points of view, And that usually means that the job is going to be much harder to do, but not always. It really is luck of the draw. I did a lot of work in the first 6 months of COVID for different not-for-profit organizations that called me and hired me right away. And I did a pile of very good identities that happened sort of in a row. And now all the jobs are very difficult and tedious. And I don't know why it goes one way or goes another way. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah. One of the, for sure, I'm sure most of the people following us today, they have seen you through this series of Netflix, Abstract, the Art of Design, which is featuring very famous names in the design industry. How was that experience for you, Paula? Can you share it with us?
Well, I really liked the Abstract series. I think Richard Press, the director, did a really good job. But while we were filming it, I wanted to kill him because he kept making me walk up and down streets in New York in the middle of summer when it was really hot and crowded. And he kept making me cross streets, and he kept making me run up and down the stairs at Pentagram a million times. And that was my memory of filming. The only part I think I really enjoyed was when I did the voiceovers on the movie films, which was fun. You know, the films of Betty Davis talking or somebody else. He had me with headphones on, sort of repeating the dialogue with him, which was amusing.
I think our people followers would like to know in a more personal way of you. And there is Lucas Bergrove that is asking if you could recommend any interesting book in design, and what is the most important thing when designing assistants? Well, we talked about this before, but if you could recommend us something on design, a book.
Okay, so the books. I really like these giant Taschen books that came out last year on the history of design. I think the first one is the whole 20th. No, it's the full 20th century. It's from, I think, the late 1800s to about 1960. And then the second book is 1960 to the present. And the work in it is miraculous. The sort of authorship and curation of it is spectacular. And they obviously did very serious research for it. And it shows every important piece of work, every significant designer, and works you've never seen. The work is organized sometimes by designer, sometimes by year, sometimes by the spirit and style of the work. They're coupled together. You really learn a lot. So I would recommend that. Of the past couple of years, those are my favorite books. And there was also one they did on information art, which is spectacular. Very big, very heavy books. I don't know if you've seen them, but they're great.
Yeah. There is a question. I will make it a bit more general, but there is Germán Guerrero that is asking if you ever work in Spain, in the Spanish industry. Have you ever worked with any client from Spain?
Do I have clients as a painter? Is that what he's asking?
In general. Well, he's asking more concrete. If you have ever worked in the fashion industry in Spain.
Have I worked in the fashion industry? I don't understand you.
Yes. He's asking, but my question would be more general. If you ever had any Spanish client?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Probably, but
I have Italian clients, but I don't think I've had any Spanish clients.
Okay.
I have a German client right now, but I don't have Spanish. Nobody hired me.
And we would like to know, Paula, who inspires Paula Scher? Who did you get the inspiration from in the beginning of your career and now?
Well, I have two major mentors. Was my teacher at college, Stanislaw Zagorski, who got me interested in typography, and my husband, Seymour Quast, who taught me so much about how to see and think about things. And currently, I'm continually inspired by all of my partners at Pentagram, both in New York and in London. It's an incredible group of phenomenally talented people, and I learn from them every day.
That's great. Pedro Almeida is asking a question for you. How design can help the world in the moment that we are right now, with the global economy, social crisis? How designers should adapt to this situation? This is a difficult question.
Well, I mean, we have to be socially and responsible, and we have to be conscious about how we are behaving in relationship to the environment and the sort of choices we make. But we've had to be doing that for a very long time, and I don't think that this is new. I think that the climate crisis has been here for a while, and it's getting worse, and we're not solving the problems fast enough. And it's a global problem, and that we have to be concerned about what we make and whether or not it's harmful to the environment. But also, we have to consider what we make socially and how we're putting that into the environment, and how we're making sure that our language is appropriate for all audiences, and that we understand other people's feelings, and that this is a complicated world of many sorts of people, of many races and many religions and many ethnicities, and that we have to be respectful and understanding of that in everything we do all the time. And that this is not new, but this is even more important now.
Yeah. And nowadays that we are all suffering, you were mentioning now your meetings are all by conference or on the computer. Obviously, for the design industry, the digital transformation is affecting for sure, because there are many designers working with new tools. For you, this is good, the digital help, or not that good?
As an environmental graphic designer, I couldn't do the work without the software, because I can actually see space. I can design typography in space. I actually have been designing parts of buildings. I just did a bus shelter in Korea, which I would never thought I knew how to design, but I can do it with my team in the software. And I'm not afraid of it. I've been doing it for 20 years, and I love it as part of my book of business. It's very exciting for me. The part of the computer I don't like at all is social media. I think social media is dangerous. I think that politically it's wreaked havoc in America. I think that there's no editor. I mean, the thing is that in the old world of news, there were things that were editors. They took out things that were inaccurate. There were fact checkers. There were people who paid attention to that. But even in simple things like people's Instagram pages, self-promotion becomes this thing that's expected. And I find that actually creepy and uncomfortable. I have a Twitter account and I have an Instagram account, and I never post anything, because I don't want to be the braggart of my work, and I want somebody else to do it. And I'm fortunate that at Pentagram we have a website where the work is visible. And I know that if I didn't have Pentagram, I would have to do that myself, but I would want to find a way to do it where it's purely clear what I'm doing. The notion of telling the community of 800,000 people what you're thinking and doing is sort of a little sick. That isn't quite right, and it seems like a massive self-aggrandizement that I find very strange. Also, it becomes that the mass of following is a measure of success, and it really doesn't mean anything. I mean, I see pieces of work that are online and they got touted and they got 20 million hits and they're really nothing and then nothing happened there and they weren't even made, and then they're gone the next day. It's like it's a false landscape. And the reason it's a false landscape is because it's virtual, it's not real. And that the relationships that are made online in places like Facebook, I remember seeing it and it felt so much like the suburbs I left, where everybody behaves the same and you're in little boxes and you all like the same things. And then somebody says that their father died and you get 27 likes. Isn't there something wrong with that? I mean, what is that? That's icky. I don't get it at all. I know I'm old, but I feel like it has not advanced society in any way, shape, or form. And coming out of an impeachment with a horrible president that we had and the uprising that was caused on social media with lies is the most dangerous thing I've ever seen in my lifetime.
It's hard to see because we see a lot of things that are fake, but they influence a lot of people. It's true. Well, the world that we are living in. There is one more question that is interesting, maybe from your experience. Alexandra Sharner, she's asking, she would love to know which criteria you choose, on which criteria you choose the people you are working with. If you choose based on skills, education, portfolio, or just intuition from your side.
So many of the people that have been on my team I've taught, they were my students. I teach at the School of Visual Arts. And some of them were people who came and interned for me. And as interns, it was really the luck of the draw. In other words, that I needed an intern because I needed some extra help and they were around and came. And if they worked out well, some of them stayed long enough to become associates. I had one that worked for me for 10 years, and not as an intern. He became he ran my signage work ultimately. And I have more difficulty hiring somebody for a more advanced position. It's usually entry level and they grow up working for me and then they stay 8 to 10 years and then they leave and start their own businesses and compete with me.
Well, there was another question that I also wanted to ask you, Paula. For all these new talents, all new students that are now preparing themselves for graphic design or any other type of design, what advice from your experience would you give them?
I think that as a young designer, the most important thing is to be around people and work that you can learn from, and to have mentors and to be able to grow and be able to develop your own vocabulary. And that, we all have to work for money, and you need to take jobs that pay. But I think it's more important when you're young to be in a situation where you can learn. And if you're not, you should change your job and do it, because this is the most important part of your career in terms of your future, is what do you absorb and how can you grow? And as you move along, the danger is that you start doing the same thing over and over again. And that's very dangerous for a designer. You have to be able to recharge and experiment and find different ways of approaching things and grow your work.
We have seen in your career, you have been working with artists related to music, companies doing banking, art, a lot of types of categories. Is there anything that Paula Scher would still like to do?
Oh, I'd like to do it all over again.
From the beginning, from the start, right? But from everything that you were sharing with us, is there one job or one painting that you would choose from you?
Throw them all out.
true, they are all very worthful, so it's difficult to choose. So, well, I think from our side, Paula, everything was asked. I don't know if you would like to, because we are being seen by a lot of designers in the Spanish industry, a lot of fans of you that loves your work. Would you want to share something with them?
Yes, I was supposed to come to this festival for 2 years, and I wish I had, because I would like to be there with you in person and be in Madrid. And I'm so sorry I'm in a box looking at you on Zoom or whatever program we're on that I didn't know how to start. So thank you for inviting me. And, you know, you can send questions to me through the program, I guess.
If anyone wants to do the final question, if not, Paula, it has been a pleasure. It's a honor to be in front of you and sharing your works with us. I'm sure the Madrid Design Festival is very proud to have you, even when it was not the way that we would like to have you. We would have loved to see you in person in Madrid, and also to share with you all the design from the Spanish industry that is also very powerful. Thank you very much. Thank you to the festival. It has been a pleasure. It's great to be in front of you, and we hope to see you in Madrid Design Festival, or anytime in Spain, in Madrid. You are always welcome to visit us.
Thank you.
And just to finalize, just to remember, Paula Scher was the first guest in this Madrid Design Pro talks. And we will see you next time with Maurice Valdemeyer next week on Thursday at 7 p.m. So thank you so much to everyone that has been attending, taking time to see us today. Thank you to Paula. With the busy agenda, it's not easy to take a break to talk to us, but you did it. Thank you so much. And thank you to Madrid Design Festival for organizing this event today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.